All right, welcome into the first actual episode with a guest of There Will Be Bourbon. Tonight I have retired CIA Paramilitary Operations Officer Ron Moeller. I would advise you to subscribe and do all that stuff now because after this, I can't guarantee the show gets better, but I can guarantee it's going to get worse. Okay, so the bar, we're at it, all right? And before I get into him and let you know all about what he's doing, the show is centered around bourbon for the most part. It facilitates discussion in my mind. So tonight we're going to do a little Stag Junior. This is my personal favorite. It comes from the GOAT Distillery, Buffalo Trace. It's a mix of 8 and 9 year bourbons. Comes in at barrel proof, so it's about 128 proof. I'm going to mail a bottle out to Ron so he can experience this greatness. But Ron, what are you drinking on, my friend?
I am drinking old Ezra number 7 here that a kind soul sent out to me.
Oh, would that be?
Gee, I wonder who that would be.
What? Yeah. Okay, so now that you know what we're doing, hopefully you guys got a glass when you review this stuff. If you don't, I advise you to do it because bourbon is, as I said before, the American spirit, and we're all Americans here, right? So let's, imbibe, especially with the 4th of July coming, celebrate freedom. All right, so Ron. All right, this is Ron's bio, everyone. So we're going to try and hit the highlights because it's enough to kind of make you feel very inadequate. All right, so Ron spent how many total years of service?
38.
38 years of service. For context, I am 39. So this man has been doing things that we all should be grateful for a very, very long time. But we're going to start. You enlisted into the Air Force of all branches in 1976 as an intelligence operation, basically a generalist. What made you choose the Air Force, Ron, at the time?
Oh God, geez, without going into all sorts of family drama at the home front, college wasn't an option because of financials, and my parents didn't believe in filling out financial aid forms because it was nobody's fucking business, how much money they made. And that sort of things. Well, my dad had some business reversals and things like that. So it was, his pride was a little sensitive. So he said, "Hey, I was in the Air Force. You should go join the military." So he dropped me off at the lovely Armed Forces Recruiting Center, and it was lunchtime. The Army guy was gone. The Marine guy was gone. The Navy guy was gone. Coast Guard dude was gone. And there was the Air Force guy just getting ready to go eat lunch. And I said, "Dude, I can't leave here until I've got a contract, save me." So yeah, it was and he had been an airborne intelligence guy, flying around, listening, intercepting voice radio, things like that. He asked me what I like to do. I told him history, social studies, political science, that sort of thing. So, he pulled out the big AFSC MOS for you Army types book, and he flips to the appropriate numerical code, and there's the SIGINT guys, and there's the imagery guys, and there's the the voice intercept guys, and I'm reading it, and it's all very dry government prose, and I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna really suck. And then, hey, here's this general intel thing, a little bit of everything. Little salt, little pepper, little Tabasco, it's all good. So I said, yeah, sign me up for this. Oh, wait, not so fast. You got to take the ASVAB. What the hell's the ASVAB? I mean, I did the SATs. Don't those count? Don't those credits transfer? No, I know. I'm talking to a recruiter here, right? So I had to go take the ASVAB a few weeks later, and yeah, surprise, surprise. I guess I passed. Because, gee, you can do any job you want in this whole book. And I'm going, yeah, okay, great. I want to do that one. Well, the first opening for the A school or tech training or whatever y'all call it in the Army, advanced course, wasn't until October. Well, this is like freaking March, April, and I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do all summer? So, hey, Dad, I guess you're stuck with me for a while, and Mom, and but in mid-October, off I went, and they dropped me off in Portland, Oregon, and I did the whole turn your head to the left and cough, and then you're standing there with a bunch of people, and you're all swearing allegiance to the country, and your oath, and we all get taken on an airplane to lovely downtown Lackland, and at dark early in the middle of the Texas night, I find the yellow footprints, and I get introduced. So it was but after that, Air Force basic training was like Boy Scout summer camp, except we got to shoot real guns.
Yeah, I feel like knowing knowing your personality a little bit, I feel like you probably were like me and you really enjoyed basic.
Well, I was 17 when I went. I mean, I was, yeah, and most of the guys that I swore, at the MEP station there in Portland, they were all going Army, Marines, whatever, and I was one of the few Air Force guys, and but most of the people in my basic training flight were either from Southern Alabama, from two different counties, a dry county and a wet county, and with the appropriate racial makeup and educational levels therein, or the south side of Chicago with, before we all got haircuts, I grew up in white bread, Oregon, right? So, but despite what's on Twitter these days, I'm really not a racist, honest. I'm just, but, this is like 76. And when there's some dude, talking in gang lingo with an afro, wider than the door opening, it's a little intimidating for a little 17-year-old punk kid from Oregon. So yeah, it was educational, but it was fun.
Yeah, I still remember. It's very similar. My battle buddy in basic training, and I won't say his name, but he comes from a city actually that our good friend Nick lives in. I would say that's well, that's his name. Let's put it that way. But yeah, he was part of that program still that was going on, where it's like, hey, look, you can go to jail or you can enlist, right? He was a Crip from the LA area, one of the best dudes I ever was around. Great guy. But it's the same thing. And then I had another buddy in AIT who he was from Kodiak, Alaska.
Nice.
And I had never been off his island, because Kodiak is apparently an island in the middle of Alaska, wherever. Never been on an island.
It's gorgeous.
Never been on an airplane. And he found himself with us in Fort Jackson, South Carolina at basic training. So that guy he was fun. And he was about the shade of this paper I printed your bio on, Ron. So he was a great guy, though. But I think kind of what you're alluding to is just, I don't know what everything went on afterwards, but the best part, I think, when you start that initial entry training in the military is you're just brought together with everybody. And you just
exactly.
You just figure it out. All that, everybody's got their own personal biases, but you have no choice but to get rid of them, or else you're all going to fail. So
exactly. And believe me, we all got tired of doing push-ups real quick.
I loved it. I am not going to lie. Like I said, I was 21, and I found out after the first week I had culture shock, but after that I realized this is everything based on being in basic training. It's all centered around sarcasm. I thrive in that environment, so let's go. And that's why I became a drill sergeant. It was basic training all over, and I loved it. But yeah. So you did that, and then I do enjoy the fact that your first assignment was essentially, you said you learned how to write backwards on a plexiglass.
Oh yeah, this is early 77.
Why did you guys have to learn backwards writing?
Well, we didn't have. There was no PowerPoint. Computers were
exactly,
were the size of houses. So it was an old plexiglass status board. It was a blue flag exercise, which is a command and control exercise version of red flag and things like that. And so I show up. I'm wet behind the ears, 18-year-old two-striper, because I got a meritorious promotion and stuff like that.
Of course you did. Ron.
Yeah. Well, hey, Mr. DI, can I kiss your butt a little bit more? Hey, it's money, dude. It's all about the money. Anyways, so I show up there, and I'm like, literally, I've been at at Bergstrom Air Base there in Austin for like 2-3 weeks, and they just sort of, hey, here's a guy, he's breathing and he's reasonably competent. He can tie his shoes type of thing, his boots. And so they put me in with this old pilot, Major, and he was one of the wild weasels from Vietnam and flew the old F-105 Thunder Chiefs. And, yeah, going toe-to-toe with SA-2s, SAMs, and things like that. And he taught me all sorts of stuff about that. I mean, because I'm just sitting there, like, I'm a sponge, feed me, please. But as part of the exercise, we had to maintain a status board on stuff like that. Well, because you couldn't get in the way of the people in the front seeing the status, I had to get behind and I had to do everything backwards. So in a way, it was kind of good practice for when I went to Arabic school many years later. So, learning to write backwards,
yeah, all backwards.
But it was a great 2 weeks. I learned a lot. The major's name escapes me, but it was educational and it brought it. This is some serious business that the Air Force guys were. They just come out of Vietnam. I mean, a few years ago. So the lessons were still there, and going against SAMs was pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, because you mentioned that where did you have that at? Well, yeah, so you moved on to Seoul into Korea, and your first, I swear, this cracks me up, because you say your first shift involved North Korea attempting to shoot down the SR-71. And
right.
It reminds me of my grandfather, because his first night in Korea, in the Korean War as a 17-year-old, he's a combat engineer. He tells us the story. First night, he was on the 50 doing, basically he was at the ECP at the time. I don't know what they were called then. And they were overrun. And I'm like, okay, this reminds me of it's the same thing. Like, first night, we got to figure some stuff out. So,
well, yeah, I mean, so I'd gotten there a month before, and I had to go through, left seat, right seat training, and I had to actually be certified as a watch NCO to do that. And so I'm sitting there, and there's oh God, I can still see her, because Navy Lieutenant 03 with great legs, who had no problem putting always wore a skirt, her khaki skirt, and had no problem putting her feet up on the watch desk, so we could all gaze at her magnificent calves, knees, and onward. Anyways, and there was an old crusty Navy E8 SIGINT guy, very, very old school, who again taught me a lot about SIGINT and how to be an NCO. Because the Air Force,
Ron, because there's going to be a lot of people that don't know what SIGINT is. So
signals intelligence.
And then listening, a human guy, which is human intelligence. So for everyone who doesn't know what that is, now you know. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. What do you mean everybody doesn't know? You're supposed to know these things. Get smart, people.
0.045%, Ron. That's what we are.
Yeah, I got it. So anyway, so I'm sitting there doing, the normal shift work, and there was an SR-71 mission that went along, and just south of the DMZ, went from east to west, and then did another leg, and then went down to Kadena, Okinawa to recover, where the SR-71s were forward based from California at the time. Well, when the SR-71 guys downloaded their tapes, we were all still on shift, and oh shit, the North Koreans shot at us. Of course, we're like 10 miles in front by the time the what was it, an SA-3 or SA-2 or SA-6, I can't remember. One of the different missiles that the Russians had sold them or given them had exploded behind them. They're like, oh, Jay. And of course, that gets put in an op immediate type message, and everybody starts, immediately like, oh my God, we're going to war. North Koreans have shot it. Like, yeah, but if we didn't have the tapes from the rear warning receiver that they, because I guess it bleeped real quick on the, on the pilot's instrument panel, but he was so busy doing all the other stuff, because the North Koreans were always trying to not so much jam the navigation aids, but change them so they would entice the either the U-2 or the SR-71 or the RC-135 or even the old OV-1 Mohawks that the Army guys would fly to cross over the DMZ into North Korean airspace so they could have an incident.
Right.
And so the pilot was pretty busy, but yeah. So, anyways, so that freaked everybody out. And then about 2-3 weeks later, they did the same. There was a choice of 4 different SR-71 flight plans. God knows we only like we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Even North Korean, even a blind North Korean can figure that one out after a while. And so we a couple weeks later we decided we were going to do the same track. And we had, I think the A-10s had just shown up, and we had F-4s and F-5s from the South Koreans, and the thing. Everybody is loaded with iron bombs, and we're all gonna, So if the North Koreans were gonna shoot, we were gonna be ready this time. We had all sorts of other little collectors out there to detect the launch. Of course, a couple days earlier, an RF-4, a reconnaissance version of the Phantom, had flown past and done a side look into North Korea. Oh, I guess the North Koreans did whatever they wanted to do. They've disassembled and the site, and all the equipment's gone. So we already sort of knew that nothing was going to happen, but it was still pretty intense.
What year was this?
This was 81. This was the fall of 81.
So, given everything else, obviously that was post-election. Reagan was first elected,
right?
And obviously things ramped up with the Cold War at the same time. But how was North Korea viewed then?
Oh God, they were. I mean,
because I was born in '80, Ron. Just so you know, so I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
My daughter was
born
in 80.
My dad on Twitter, because look.
Yeah, and my son found out about that. He's gonna, if you're ever TDY to Fort Bragg, he's gonna look you up, and he's gonna
absolutely.
He'll take you out to the wood line and he'll smoke your ass.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, the North Koreans were,
because when did they become like this threat that everyone is so?
Well, they've always been a threat since when your pop was out there.
We're so afraid of them. I feel like now.
Well, it's because they're unpredictable. They're so unpredictable. So I think Kim Il Sung had died, so his son
was there,
Kim Jong Il, whatever. God, I can't. One of the Kim boys.
I think it is Kim Jong Il, and right now it's Kim Jong Un. So
and so he had taken, and he was, again, we didn't know a lot about him. It took years to develop just Kim Il Sung biography and a profile, so you could kind of anticipate this and that. There was a guy there at U.S. Forces Korea, an old civilian. I think he'd been born and lived in Korea before Korea became a peninsula. This guy was ancient, but he spoke the language. He knew the culture. He knew North Korea. He was, he would come down and he would sort of pat it, one of those typical, uber intel guys, that's nobody wants to bother because he's the $1 million brain guy. And so it was but he gave us a lot of good stuff on that, and not just to me. Obviously, I'm like the low-ranking dude in the room.
You're a young guy.
There's the 4-star commander and generals and all the deputy generals. Man, I said, damn, I could get an astronomy merit badge here. There's so many freaking stars. It was awesome. So, yeah, you can see I'm a sarcastic bastard too.
I know you are, and that's exactly why we get along. Okay, so you moved on from that, and I didn't know this. You did 11 years in the Air Force. For some reason, I was always under the guise that you did 3, and then you got out. I did your initial enlistment, got out, and then went into the
11 years, 3 months, and 2 days. Not that I counted.
Okay, so you got down on here that you answered an ad, which I think, like I told you in the little pre-show fist fight that we were doing, that you answered an Army ad, or an ad for an Army program known as MyCP, which was
Military Intelligence Civilian Accepted Career Program.
That is so DOD right there. If anyone does,
it is
Department of Defense. But if you don't understand, like the Department of Defense has more acronyms. They don't even know what any of them are at this point. There's just too many.
They have a dictionary about yay thick,
Exactly. And
broken down by services.
So you answered an ad. What was the ad? Were they just like, hey?
It was a nice quarter-page ad in Army or Air Force Times.
Yeah.
Do you like to travel? Do you speak a foreign language?
What was the language you spoke at the time?
I spoke German because my parents were German, so and a little bit of Korean. And you like to travel, and you have a college degree, and I was finishing up my.
Right. So very.
I was finishing up my master's, at night, part time.
Yeah. So that's very important. Before Ron goes any further, look, because I've done it and he's done it, and there's many of us amongst the military that have done it. If you're a young soldier in any branch looking at this right now, go to college.
Oh yeah.
And don't use. Oh, I got a full-time job. I can't go up. Look, I did my master's doing recruiting. You can do this. Okay. So,
yes, you can. I mean, the Air Force was paying 90% tuition assistance. Yeah, I couldn't afford not to go to school. My wife was literally saying, "Do this."
Ridiculous. But yeah. So okay. So you did that. You responded to the ad.
I did it. I sent him a crappy resume, not as Gucci as the one you got there, and so yeah, stop. It doesn't look that big on my screen, and I got a response within a couple of weeks, and a guy flew out to St. Louis, and he met me in a hotel room, really crappy hotel room too, and it was
Air Force standards that you were used to. So
well, it was just a crappy room. Period. I mean, it was La Quinta Inn minus. So it was.
The '80s, they didn't really have quality of life as a concern.
I got it.
The '80s were horrible all around. Even I know that.
Hey, the music was great.
The music was great. I agree. I would love to bring that back. Metal, pop, all of it was great in the '80s. But that was about it. Design, cars, everything, awful.
Oh yeah, no, I'm tracking. Yeah, that's good. Anyway, so I meet. He gives me an interview, and I guess I answered it all. And the MySEP program was really had two tracks, two career paths in it. One, you could do counterintelligence, catch spies, or the other one was what they called AI, area intelligence, or what we now call FI, field intelligence or foreign intelligence, which is go out and recruit spies and gather intelligence. He asked me which one I would prefer, because I guess I was qualified for either one. Hell. And I said, well, I gave what I thought was the correct, proper answer. Well, whatever the needs of the Army are, I'll be happy to do that. Because I really didn't want to re-enlist again for a third enlistment, and I wanted to, I'd invested all this time and effort and emotion and some heartbreak at home and stuff like that. Yeah, because you're taking time away from the family.
Typical story. Got it.
Right. Yeah, and so I wanted to like advance. I didn't want to just like, hey, good, look at me, I'm an E7 and I've got a master's degree. Woo!
That's me. Yeah. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, and sorry, and and I have to go work for some second lieutenant who is like, well, I just graduated from college and I'm your boss and I'm smart, and I'm going, okay, yeah, never mind, because the Air Force is a lot different than the Army, and I mean, my son's a platoon sergeant in the 82nd, so he rules the platoon, and the poor lieutenant.
I had platoon sergeant. It's a very different world. I understand.
It is, and he dominates, as he likes to put it. He does very well, and diplomatically too. So
it's all about that.
It is. It's an art. Anyway, so he said, well, we'll be in touch. So I'm going, oh shit. So a couple weeks later, I have a telephone interview. And they said, all right, we're gonna pick you for the FIAI track, the human gathering stuff. I go, great. When are you gonna be available? This is like the fall of '87, and I was getting ready to finish my master's. I had like one last course to do, and which ended a week before my enlistment ended in January of '88. So, and I said, yeah, they said, well, great. Well, So can you show up on this Tuesday in January, which happened to be the Tuesday right after the initial Martin Luther King holiday in 1988? So worked out. So I literally had 3 days of unemployment, which gave me time to, you know, put my little Subaru from St. Louis over to DC, and so we did that, and I did 2 weeks of in processing, or maybe it was a week, and you get to start meeting your classmates, your other fellow MICEPs, and yeah, I'm going like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? And then one day they said, because we're all like, okay, where do we go to school? What's the training? What's going on? They say, you're gonna go to a place called the farm. And I'm like, cool.
So that's real. That's a real thing, huh?
Well, that's what everybody calls it, but whatever.
And
So yeah, so
I've learned so much about the CIA from TV. I just want to know it's real.
yeah, it's all kabuki theater, and it's so yeah, so we're told we get to we can't, so whatever day we're supposed to report, we can't report any earlier, and we have like a 1-2 hour window to get south of Washington and show up at the farm, and yeah, boy, they take the whole, when you get there, it there's no humor, there's no sarcasm, these guys are locked and loaded, they're very serious, and they expect you to be as well.
So no fun, what you're saying.
It was a learning experience. I mean, it was 6 months of
was it 6? Okay, it was
6 months.
Wow.
6 months, yeah, it was a long course.
So it was 6 months of essentially, you said their field training course? Is that?
Well, it at the time it was called the Military Operations Training Course, which was the DoD version of the agency's course, and now they're all combined into the field training course, the FTC.
Is it still 6 months?
6 months. Oh yeah.
Okay.
So here's
a lot more, because I mean.
Well, there's a lot to learn. I mean,
my experience obviously is basic training, right? 8, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it is now, but still. I imagine you guys are going into a much deeper dive.
Very deep. A lot of exercises, developing a lot of muscle memory, and things like that. And you're basically thrown into. It's a little like the Q course in that you're thrown into a scenario in the final Robin Sage part of the Q course. You get to there's a bunch of competing countries, and you're assigned to an embassy or an army post or whatever, U.S. Army post, and you have to gather intelligence, force protection intelligence. You have to gather intelligence designed to eliminate terrorists and things like that. It was pretty. So there's a lot of lessons in it. It builds up gradually. You learn skill sets, and
how long had that been going on before you got there?
Oh gosh, years. I mean, there was, in one way, shape, or form, I'm sure they were teaching the course. I mean, we had instructors. Most of them were agency guys. A few former military guys, Air Force and Army, but the agency guys were probably the most exciting and taught, I think, the best lessons. They also had a better world view, if you will. The military guys that were instructing, they were, I don't know, they were very narrow focused. They had a small aperture.
Yeah, that's a good word for it, because I was going to say, like, we have a very small sight picture. Let's see.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Expound or expand upon the aperture.
I mean, I still remember one guy, an old guy. He was a old agency guy. He's passed now, but he taught us he told us a story of he said, a lot of my fellow instructors are going to tell you all about their wonderful successes and beat their chest, and they're going to they're going to preen, and they're going to strut around the stage here, and actually they were in a pit, and we were in like auditorium seating, and there was only 30 of us in the class, and the agency who were a week ahead of us, their version of the course also only had 30. These days, the course is like 200 people combined.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so you can see the U.S. government's investment in human and things like that. But
human
anyways,
for those who don't remember, and 35 Mike if you're in the Army and want to do it. But anyway.
Anyway, yeah. So yeah, he said, I'm going to tell you about one of my biggest failures, and that was the thing that resonated the most, I think, with us. It showed the human cost of what he was doing, and how, you recruit people to betray their country, betray their, where their fellows,
Yeah.
and their fellow citizens, and sometimes those people get caught and they get killed. And not only do they get killed, but their families get killed, and their whole DNA strain gets wiped out. And he told us that, and it was, let me tell you, it got the old sphincter tight.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was.
So that kind of leads into my next question, because you're there, you're doing that, and then you were selected to learn Arabic.
Yeah, after I graduated, remarkably enough, it's quite the learning. I mean,
wait, this on real quick, because I want to put context to this, because
this was let's see, I graduated in, let's see, I went to school, started in January '88, graduated in May, June '88, so 5.5, 6 months, whatever it was. And then Arabic was started in about a year later, '89.
Okay. So
just before Desert.
Okay, so as long as people can conceptualize what was going on in the world.
Well, when did Desert Shield kick off? Desert Shield was what, 90?
Well, okay, so 1990, I think, was Shield.
Okay, then it was 90, not 89. It was 90. So it was the summer of '90 that I got selected to go to Arabic.
Yeah, so I would imagine, because Somalia wasn't far after, which you talk about.
Right.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I guess this was all really starting to kind of permeate.
Oh yeah. Well, even in the Air Force, even while I was in the Air Force working in my last assignment, we got to work Operation El Dorado Canyon when the F-111s came out of England to bomb Libya, and then the Achille Lauro, the cruise liner that was taken over by Palestinian Liberation Front, whatever, I can't remember, and they threw Leon Klinghoffer, that name I do remember. He was a wheelchair-bound American gentleman who happened to be Jewish, and they basically just pushed him over the side and let him drown and killed. And then the TWA thing where the Navy civil engineer diver Robbie Steedham got murdered. Yeah, it was, so there was, I'd been working these things, obviously from afar, but, there was, and of course the Russian Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So there was, and then the Iranian hostage thing. And so all this happened while I was on active duty. So yeah, I mean, it was, as you say, it's starting to coalesce. And
it's amazing, because we went from the Cold War and right into this, and I don't think people realize that. So
yeah, it's been a never ending thing. And the Cold War was easy. I mean, my wife spent most of her Army career in Germany working counterintelligence, catching Soviet and East German spies, and she was very good at it. You
might have to get your wife on, Ron. What the hell?
Yeah, no.
Where's she at the goon zooms? What's going on?
No, she's
awesome.
That's not her thing. She's anyway. So yeah, I get to go to Arabic school, and I'm the only non-State Department person going. I didn't go to DLI, the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, or one of the satellite courses at Fort Bragg or wherever. I got to go to the Foreign Service Institute language school there in DC, the State Department, the premier language school. And so here I get stuck in Arabic, and I'm with a bunch of brand new State Department Foreign Service officers, diplomats, young diplomats. Mm-hmm. Holy fucking Lord, Jesus. So the first thing everybody has to do is compare pedigrees. And the first thing I realize is, all the guys are wearing their blue blazers and their, whatever, and the ladies are all wearing very, very nice.
Like a frat mixer.
kind of, sort of, yeah. I felt like those three cats in Animal House, Habu and Jabu and you know.
Which is what I sent Nick. I actually sent him that clip of "It's not over." Anyway.
Exactly. So anyways, yeah. So they go around, the one guy, well, I have a PhD. I remember this guy. He was a pompous little prick. I have a PhD in French from Stanford. And I go, what the hell do you do with a PhD in French? I mean, yeah.
Exactly. You
And,
speak it. You speak. That's what you do.
well, yeah, he just looked at me like, you don't understand. And so they all asked me, and others had gone to Harvard and Georgetown and UCLA and all the nice expensive schools
Yep.
and so they asked me where I went to school. I went to school. I got my master's from Webster, which is a very decent school. They have a good program. And a lot of senior officers have gotten their masters, one of their masters from there. So, hey, I wasn't ashamed. But I'm like, well, I'm just not going to say Webster's and have everybody look down their nose at me because, these are my classmates and I'm supposed to be in a study group with them. And I really don't want to no, Ron, the emphasis is on this vowel, not on that vowel, and constantly get failing grades, which would really suck career-wise. So they said, and they knew I was DOD. They didn't know I was Army, and they thought I was just some uh, what's the foreign area officer type guy, a FAO,
Okay.
and which is a specialized Army program for regional experts, country experts. That it's a very small elite group within the Army, and I guess there's some in the Air Force and the Navy as well. Anyways, so they asked me where I went. I'm kind of looking around and all these prima donnas and hoity-toities and what all, and I go, well, I did mine while I was doing 5 to 10 at West Virginia Penn. Oh my God! So, so they all looked at me, and I total straight face. I mean, it's, some of that training at the farm really did pay off. By God, I can tell this lie straight to you. And I can put you in this car today for $9.99. So it was, yeah. And a couple of the girls came up to me later, and I guess suddenly I became the bad boy, and they're like, so what were you in for in West Virginia? And I go, well, they only could convict me of moonshining, but they still haven't found the bodies. So it was just after it was just I just turned it into a joke. But yeah, it was great. So but it was the again the we had to use cassettes and a lot of interplay with the staff, and the staff were all native speakers, and Arabic has many dialects.
Right.
And we our original one was a female lady from Palestinian, and she was very proud of that, and we couldn't get into any of the politics of that. And there was a couple Egyptian.
How are you? Because I know how we learn it today, but how are you guys there wasn't
we just
a lot of technology back then.
Well, we listened to radio broadcasts from radio, pick a country.
Yeah.
We listened to videotapes, VHS and or beta. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, of the Gulf states had their version of Sesame Street. And
okay,
those little fucking 4-year-olds spoke better Arabic than we did. Jesus, pissed me off.
Yeah.
Cool. And then we had a couple guys from Syria, Iraq. I think we had a Yemen guy, but the most interesting guy I remember, he was kind of shy, but he was from Sudan and spoke Arabic. And of course, we're always curious because he was still relatively new. He'd just gotten his citizenship and everything. And he was really, really proud to be in America, and he said, and this always resonated, of all the things I learned, because not only do you learn the language, you have to learn the culture of the Middle East and the different Arab countries, and so we got hosted by a lot of the different embassies to learn about their particular culture and their dialects and what all. And it was not just the language; it was the all-encompassing stuff. But he talked about Sudan, and he said, the thing about Islam and Arabic, and I'm probably going to misquote him, and is they're always looking backwards to when they had their glory years,
Yeah.
and then they were always like they would look forward and be too scared, and then they'd go back to, but back when back when we were doing algebra and you guys were still living in caves type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something along. And he says, in America, I could come and I could I could be up to my opportunity. Whatever my abilities, my opportunities, as long as I was willing to put in the work, I could achieve my
Right.
level of success. Something like that. It was always very honest and forthright. And I, my parents being immigrants and naturalized citizens, that resonated with me as well. So I thought that was pretty cool. So,
Yeah. I feel like that's at the core of a lot of people, because, and this is what I mean, I don't want to really get into it because I feel like there's just so much more stuff that about yourself we could talk about, but that's why I said, like, Twitter's not real. It's not a totally real representation of the country or the world. It's a very small snapshot of who actually uses it, but not only who uses it, but who uses it regularly.
exactly.
Just said is exactly it's kind of what I hold on to, is like when I close that app, or I put the laptop down and I go outside and just for example at my gym, I was just talking about this with the coach at my gym, and one of the members. She's third generation Mexican, he's first generation Filipino. Like there's no animosity, none of that exists. It's just like,
No.
hey, my parents came and did this, we all came together and did this. The girl I was just talking about, her parents met at Ellis Island, and they were in the same class learning English together, and that's how they met. And that to me is what is the real American experience. It's not all this like doom and gloom you see on Twitter, or even if we move it to Parler, which is, they need to figure that side out. But
Yeah.
oh my God. But none of this stuff that's on social media, and I feel bad because I feel like so many corporations and companies are forced to react to the Twitter mob. But, it's trying to paint itself as this modern day town square. Not everybody participating, you know what I mean? Like, my parents don't participate in that. Like, I mean, and it's not even about the age group. It's a very small snapshot of the country. But when you go out and interact with your neighbors, I know, Ron, you're up in a nice area away from everything.
You can say it. You can say.
I won't say your location, but I'm in the Bay Area of California. You know what? I don't have any issues with my neighbors or anybody that's out there. Like, we're all kind of in this together. We realize that. But if you allow the media to just dictate your narrative, you're going to hear the opposite, and it's not true. It's just
And if you let somebody else dictate, whether it's the media or somebody else dictate your narrative, then you're literally not an independent American anymore. You're a subject, not a citizen.
right.
So.
And it's not true. And I feel like that leads us kind of to where we've gotten to. But you just talked about all that, and I was gonna highlight. You said the DIA's defense was the human service gift from General Clapper.
Oh, that was, the sarcasm didn't come through in that.
Oh, it came very through. But I actually kind of want to jump ahead though, because
That's fine.
like I said, we could talk for hours on the stuff you've done, man. But so pre 9/11, from what I understand, you were in Hungary.
We were in Hungary. So I was, by this time I had made my way to the agency as a detailee, as part of the Intel Community Assignment Program, and
No official.
yeah, I know. And it's actually a great program, although it never does what it's intended to do. It's intended to, broaden people's perspective of the other agencies. So, people in like a DIA or naval intelligence don't have a stovepipe, and they only think they think broader of all the 16, 17 intel organizations within the
right.
Intelligence community. Although what happens is most people they they apply to and get selected to, whatever organization they want to go to, and that's their way to jump ship. It's sort of a sneaky, way, and which was my way too. I had no whatsoever compunction that I was going to come back to DIA. God help. So anyway, so I'm in the Office of Military Affairs, and I was one of the people who was working military exercises. The agency would have to send representatives to represent the agency to participate in military exercises, because we do have authorities that the military doesn't, and so we need to be used to working with the military, and the military needs to be used to working with us, because there's a lot of bad history, bad blood. Most agency people by now haven't been in the military, and they only know the military from watching bad movies, and vice versa with the military folks. They, watching bad agency movies. Anyways, so one of these exercises, this is before I became a full-time employee, literally, was we were going over to Budapest as part of the, and I can't remember exactly. It was a 3-agency. There was the State Department was in the lead, the Counterterrorist Office of State Department, the agency, and then people from JSOC were part of like an incident response team or whatever. We were going over to Budapest to train with the Hungarian counterterrorist and intelligence services on a scenario, which I can't remember because it never happened. Because we left Andrews Air Force Base on a Sunday, got to or is it a Saturday? Anyways, and so by Monday we're at the U.S. Embassy, and we're taking over the giant conference room, and the ambassador is still. She had just gotten confirmed in D.C., and she hadn't shown up yet. The chief of station was kind of like, yeah, and the defense attaché was, yeah. So we were sort of left on our own, which is fine. And because we're in Central Europe, it's Budapest, it's wonderful, it's it's September, it's a gorgeous city. If you got to go to Europe, go visit Budapest.
I've been there. I had a really great experience in an Indian restaurant where I decided for the first time to elect hot on their food.
So anyways, and we had all packed go bags in case we had to go forward, because we were part of another subset team if something were to happen real world, that we would all go forward. And well, I was literally had been picked like days before we were all supposed to hop on the airplane, so I didn't pack well, and I didn't have the right clothes. So they gave me a small stipend and sent me to the Hungarian clothing mall. Where I got to buy very, very bad Adidas, shirts and polo shirts and other assorted stuff.
White New Balance. That's it.
Oh God, and Pumas. So anyways, yeah. So we, which all ended up in Goodwill as soon as I got home. So yeah, so we, so me and we had lunch, and so then we're in early lunch, and so we're bopping back to the embassy. We left the embassies normal. We show back up. We come around the corner. And all of a sudden, here's all these Hungarian armored personnel carriers, not tanks, but big armored, wheeled vehicles, and combat Hungarian troops, with still wearing very Russian-like uniforms, which as an old Cold War guy, you kind of start to have the little heebie-jeebies a little bit there. And yeah, so we whip out our diplomatic passports and go through the Hungarian checkpoint, which is pretty easy because we were obviously Americans. And we get to guard post 1, which is the initial guard post going into any embassy, and it's manned by Marines. And the Marines aren't in their khakis and blue trousers with the red stripe. They're dressed. They're in battle rattle, and we're like, hey, Gunny, what the hell? What's going on here? He's like, you don't know. Passes us in, and we go back in, and whatever business was going on in the embassy that day stopped. And there's all the TVs blaring with CNN International, BBC, whatever, all showing the same stuff. and get back just in time, maybe 10 minutes later, to see the second airplane crashing into the other tower.
And as you say
And
that, so um, obviously you just laid out, you were in a very different experience than myself. So my experience from 9/11 and when it happened was I was very involved in music at the time. And I remember I had been up all night and I heard the same thing. And I was actually listening to the Howard Stern show. And I thought it was a joke. I really did. Because he was saying, hey, you know, a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. I'm like, all right. And I had listened to Howard Stern for years at the time. And I was like, this may be a little. All right, you're not on the line. You've definitely crossed the line if this is a fucking joke. You know what I mean?
right,
So something told me go turn on the news, and I remember like I went out and it was what was it 9:48 I think in the morning in the East Coast time when the second plane hit, and I turned CNN on at the time. Literally, the picture came on my screen as the second plane hit the tower.
wow,
Now, and the thing about it was, I was just in New York City from September 7th to September 9th, and my buddies and I had just gone to the Windows of the World restaurant in one of the towers.
right,
So to me, I'm sitting there like, what the fuck is going? Like,
yeah,
not real. This isn't real. Now, whatever's going on right now, because I've been up all night, so I'm not in a great state of mind. But yeah, it's kind of what you said, like. You turned on,
yeah.
you see this happen in real time, and you're like, okay. So for you, what was next?
Well, so we're all literally all us T wires that were there. Um, there's also a couple reps from the FBI there on the team. They're on the phone. The State Department guys are on the phone. A couple of the other agency people are on the phone. The JSOC guys are on the phone, and we're hearing every rumor. You know, you know, Washington Monument's been blown up. There's this and that, da 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 da. The Pentagon. The whole bit, the Capitol building. I mean, because there was.
You guys are on the other side of the world. You're
Yeah,
not. There's no internet.
there's exactly, and there's panic going on in D.C. I could only imagine, and the embassy people were totally like, yeah. The DAT and the station guys, they were like, and so the senior military officer, Lieutenant Colonel, who is now a 4-star general, Scotty Miller in Afghanistan, comes up to me, puts his arm around me. And he's a little short guy, but typical Ranger paratrooper, but love him to tears. He says, Ron, one of my jobs on this team was to be I was supposed to no, I need more bourbon. Synthesize, yeah, synthesize the intelligence and put it into some sort of,
I got it.
comprehensive, easily understandable brief. He says, I need you to put together something and brief everybody, the combined embassy team, country team, all of us TDYs in 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's not intimidating at all.
Yeah, it was. I'd given a million briefings in my day and did afterwards, but that was by far the toughest briefing because I didn't know what I didn't know. I could only speculate. Thank God I speculated somewhat correctly on some of the things. We were getting all sorts of fragments of information. A lot of it later was proven to be erroneous, and I was able to, I think, communicate adequately what we knew for sure, what we didn't know. Let me back up. On the flight over, we were getting real data dumps on real world intel, just to keep us in the loop. And one of the things that we were apprised about was the assassination of Massoud, the Northern Alliance resistance leader in Afghanistan, by the 2 assassins that were hired by the Taliban and Al Qaeda. And so, as I mentioned way earlier, I'd been following Afghanistan on and off since the Soviet invasion, or actually the multiple overthrows and coups that happened in Afghanistan before the Soviets came in. So I'm going, oh, this is not good. Something's going on, because why would they want to do Massoud? Are they going to do a final push into the Panjshir and try to eliminate the last resistance to the Taliban regime? But so we were on that. So when the airplanes all hit and I had to give the brief, I went ahead and said, so this is probably the work of Al Qaeda. And,
Yeah, you nailed
well, yeah, well,
it.
I certainly didn't think it was the IRA or the Japanese Red Army or something like that. So it was, but it was the hardest brief. And then the brief got done, and then we're all like, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah.
Well, the exercise got canceled. Go figure. The JSOC guys all disappeared down to Tezar, which is a Hungarian air base down in south central Hungary, and to retrograde back to Fort Bragg. And our airplane was the Air Force airplane that we'd all flown on was up at Ramstein or Ramstein up in Germany. Well, anyways, so and of course nothing was flying in the States. Everything was shut down, and even though we were official Air Force and everything like that, so we spent the next week in Budapest, just checking in the morning, checking at night, and the rest of the time was our own.
Wow.
The Hungarian people were absolutely wonderful. They found out we were Americans. Lots of free beer, lots of free food.
Yeah, how was that reaction since you were in an entirely separate country?
Very supportive. I mean, the Hungarians, they just recently been, overthrew the.
They've got a great history of their own. They know what's going on. So.
Right, but they they were very, they were sympathetic, empathetic, and very supportive of America, and so even the Roma, the Gypsies,
yep.
Decided not to pickpocket us quite as much. So it was.
Yeah. So I at the time I was in Hungary back in 2008 and 2007, and both times once they found out I was American, I was in Debrecen, and we went up to Budapest for a weekend. But I do remember they're very very pro-American.
They are. The Central and Eastern European countries are remarkably very pro-American because they still remember just within a generation what it's like to not be free.
I remember one of my undergrad classes was the politics of the European Union, and I mean the 90s as a whole was just, you got Ukraine becoming an independent, like all that stuff that went on. I mean, it's not that long ago, and there are still some incredible geopolitical stuff going on that.
Oh yeah.
Because most of us don't even understand what the hell is going on in that world. But yeah, which leads me into my point of what I was saying earlier. But I'll get to that. But Ron, I swear, where are we at? We're almost at an hour, but we're not even halfway to what I wanted to get into.
Well, then just jump to it, dude. Just go for it.
Okay, so same time frame for the most part. So this is when Anna Montes, that scenario essentially unfolded, right? This was after 9/11?
Right. Yeah, right after 9/11. Anna Montes was a employee of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and she was arrested by federal agents, the FBI, as a Cuban spy, and subsequently convicted, and she's in prison until, what'd you say, 2023?
January 8th, she gets out, so just in time for, she started getting her campaign together for 2026.
There you go. Yeah.
We'll be out in time for the whoever gets sworn in as the next president. Put it that way. Whether it's Trump or it's Biden, she'll be out.
God help us.
It's so 2020, man. You know it.
It is. It is. Anyways.
Wait, I'm wrong. That would not be the swear-in. It's 2020.
Whatever. It's all good. Yeah, exactly. It's all good. So anyway, so so she'd been arrested, and the agency sent out the Office of General Counsel, I think, sent out an agency-wide announcement on the agency, for all its faults and foibles, is very good with electronic communication. Very little paper. Everything's electronic. Very, very easy to navigate, even for somebody as boomerish as I am. I'm not quite a. So yeah. So anyways, they sent out this, hey, this is what happened. If anybody, has ever had any contact with her, blah, 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 you should, reach out to us and let us know. Well, I had, about a year prior, before I'd come over to the CIA, when I was in the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency's exercise office, I'd gone down to Norfolk, to Atlantic Command at the time, or was it JIFFY-COM, Joint Forces Command? I can't remember. They all look alike to me. But anyways, we'd done an exercise with the Marines out of Lejeune and the Navy, Second Fleet there, and the scenario was basically the Castro's brothers had died, Cuba was undergoing turmoil, unrest, and to prevent a large boat lift coming into Florida, blah blah blah, the United States was going to send the Marines into Cuba to stabilize the situation and provide humanitarian relief, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Anna got picked as part of the DIA team to go down because she was the DIA's resident expert on Cuba. Unbeknownst to all of us, of course, she'd been recruited a long time ago to spy for the Cuban government and the Cuban regime. So yeah, so she was down there, and she was quite helpful to the Marine generals and colonels and the Navy admirals and captains, and asked a lot of questions about troop dispositions and how they would do certain things. And
so she was bad at this.
Oh yeah.
Because this is what I said to you, like, and I think, I'm not gonna lie, I feel most of us just kind of gloss over it and hit next. But we do this insider threat training, we do this cyber awareness training, and this is the type of person we cover. And it seems so obvious because what you just said is like, she's very overt and like,
But I thought it was, but all of us just thought it was intellectual curiosity. I mean, I would have asked a lot of the same questions, but
it is very obvious when you look back, like you said, in hindsight.
Well, yeah, hindsight's always 20/10. I got that. So anyway, so I clicked yes, and I immediately got a phone call, on my little secure line there, come see us right now. And so I go over to their office, and I, in a lot more ad nauseum detail than I've told you in the audience, my whole interaction with her, and they go, oh, okay. And then they leave me in this room. I literally feel like I'm the suspect. Yeah. They go off and leave me, and they come back and say, you need to make yourself available tomorrow at this time and report here at this time. So I did, and then we got into. I went with them and a couple lawyers from Office of General Counsel, and why I needed to, I don't know, but they told me, we're not here to represent you, we're here to represent the agency. I go, great, why do I still feel guilty? I didn't do anything wrong. And we get into this beautiful town car, and we get driven into DC. And this was literally the only time, like in the movies, we're driving into DC, it's on the between the Capitol and the White House, it's on that side of the mall. And here's a door, a bunch of businesses, buildings, whatever but here's a door, leads into the offices that go on top of the businesses on the ground floor. And we go in there, and wow, here's some federal protective security officers and the metal detector and everything like that. Gee, this must be one of those weird federal office buildings that you don't really know about. Okay. So we go through all that, and we go up to pick a floor and into a room, and I get to meet the U.S. attorney that's prosecuting Ana Montez, the senior FBI counterintelligence agent who arrested her, and a couple other people from both their staffs who took copious notes and I had to repeat my story again. And I told them all that, and it really the U.S. attorney said, thank you, you've really fleshed out part of what we didn't know. And afterwards, we're sort of sitting around having coffee, and while they're all figuring out, do I need to be asked any follow-on questions? Do I need to make myself available for her trial or the grand jury or whatever? I'm like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? And I'm sitting there talking to the senior FBI guy. And I say, so, hey, my wife, she's retired Army counterintelligence. So I can even spell CI, right? And so I said, so I mean, you guys did a surreptitious entry into her living quarters or into her apartment. He says, oh yeah, and he says, oh yeah, and we found her radio that she communicated with. It's old school
Yeah,
to
I read how she communicated. It's so
yeah.
weird.
But yeah, so he said, yeah, we found it all. I mean, he says, dude, she's guilty of sin. I go, wow. And like you kind of go, looking back, the 2020 hindsight, you're going, yeah, okay. But then if every time I see something, with people asking questions, are you a spy? Are you a spy?
Yeah.
So it was like one of those, like real,
Did you ever
welcome
watch
to the real world.
Americans?
I'm sorry?
The Americans? Did you ever watch that show?
No, I didn't. I try not to watch too much spy fiction.
Well, I know because I mean, obviously you live that, but I'm always curious when it comes up because it's just like, is it that obvious, or is Hollywood just that, it's that fantasized where?
Well, the Americans, is based on some real incidents of sleepers.
But I mean, what you're telling me, like this woman got 25 years, and
Oh yeah.
what
Well, she was unrepentant, and she continues to be unrepentant. And she's, as we said in the what you call it, the arm wrestling, the fist fight before we started this. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, there's one of the things you learn about recruitment is there's four types of recruitment. There's monetary, you spy for money. There's revenge, because you want to get back at the people. There's personal ego because I'm smarter than everybody else in there. And then the worst one that it's probably the easiest to recruit because they've already recruited themselves is ideological. And Anna is a true believer. And
so so what I read, she was born in West Germany. Yeah, so I read she was born in West Germany, came and went to school at Johns Hopkins University.
Oh yeah, she had the great pedigree.
Yeah, I assume at some point she got her American citizenship. But
right. Yeah.
Like you said, I don't know because it's so easy to look in hindsight. We're talking 20, 25 years ago, but like I said, when I do this training every year, I'm just like, come on, it can't be this obvious. But you describe somebody who really is this obvious, and it took a while, obviously, for them to get caught. But also, she had risen up to where she was the she was the subject matter expert for Cuba, right?
Yeah, in Defense Intelligence Agency, and believe me, when she got arrested, I guess there was a lot of people in DIA going like, no, I had nothing to do with Cuba.
I don't know, man.
I've always been the Antarctica expert, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is a very interesting story that you have and you've got experience with, and I'm glad you obviously did your part in that. But I need to fast forward. So now we're in Iraq. Okay, we're going to Iraq because you've got, like 400 to 12 to, okay, not 400, 12 to Afghanistan. And you went to Pakistan. But here's the thing I really need to know about. How did you try to steal Uday Hussein's Porsche?
It was a beautiful yellow 911 convertible. God, gorgeous.
We were in Iraq at the same time, so I like this. I was 20.
Well, we were. I was the one of the agency guys there at Baghdad. I was in charge of the agency aviation.
Okay.
We were at Baghdad International Airport.
That's where I was hanging out in a little bombed out warehouse,
Yeah, but you were on the skunk side. We were at the VVIP side,
I was by the PX. I was fine.
A true PX.
Where I did a 4.5-hour wait. You know what? July 4th's coming up. I did a 4.5-hour wait in a Burger King line when the USO tour was there with Kid Rock and the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders from 2003, and I passed out in the line. I'll never forget it. But anyway, go ahead.
Man, that is just weak. I would never admit that. I would say something like I got called away for duty or something like that.
You know what? I'll own it. It was 120 degrees out. Whatever.
Well, then weren't you wearing your big floppy?
I was. I got plenty of those pictures somewhere. I was very tired, Ron. You know, I was very tired.
anyways, anyways, so yeah, so we had to go to the main civilian terminal a couple times, and the duty free store was obviously closed, so we
Yes.
had to we liberated a lot of the liquor that was there,
I know it well.
and yeah, so yeah, there was a lot of yes, I admit war crimes and theft, and not war crimes, but yeah. So whatever it was, spirit missions. That's what we call them, spirit missions, morale boosting missions. Anyways, we yeah, there you go. Anyways, so there was the parking lot is out there, and I happened to, at the time, my wife and I had a Porsche back in DC, and
Wow, ballers. Damn, look at you, Ron.
yeah, well, everybody's got to have a midlife crisis.
Damn.
So
Stealing that
so it was, I see this yellow Porsche out there, and of course the top's down, so I'm going, oh man, and it's summer in Iraq. I mean, it's getting beat to, the interior is going to be, but I'm going, hey, let's check it out. And of course, it had already been rat fucked by God knows how many people. But we come to find out after the fact, so we tried to figure out how to hotwire it or whatever, and I said, the problem was it was slammed into a bunch of other cars, so there's no way I could just even get our tow truck to come and like pull it out or anything like that. I would have needed one of those little Jetson things to come in,
wow.
So anyways, yeah, it was, but yeah, I found out later talking to people that were there during the UN inspection days that, Uday would drive that Porsche, blast past them on the highways at Mach 6 or something like that. So, but yeah, so anyways, yeah, it was, it was one of those cool things, Uday's Porsche and
Yeah, I still remember that, man. It was like, I think it was December 13th when they caught Saddam. So
right.
when did they kill Uday and
It was a few months earlier. Yeah, that was
like October, wasn't it? Or
yeah, October. I don't know. It was in the fall.
I remember them because we talked about this. I remember them bringing the remains to Bayap initially, and then you write in here how they flew them to Amman, and I just remember like, can we go home? No.
Yeah.
And then, like when they caught Saddam in December, it was like December 13th, and I was just like, I remember my platoon sergeant, and he was the old crusty E7, and he had been in Vietnam like towards the last year of Vietnam, and I'm like, dude's been in like 27 years. It's crazy. And he's like, we caught the bastard. I'm like, yeah. Are we going home? Nope. We still didn't go home. And that's what I kind of want to transition into, Rob, because it's going to be it's going to like really back up from stealing Usay's Porsche, but it's still one of those things in my mind. It sticks out clear as day. And I'm just curious what you thought when you saw it, or heard about it, whatever. What was your take at the time of the mission accomplished flag on that carrier?
Oh, the banner. At the time, I think the carrier people put it up. They were coming back from a pretty intense deployment, combat deployment, flying combat missions over Iraq. And so for them, they'd accomplished their mission.
So it was specifically for them.
Right. It was for them. And unfortunately,
that was for trade.
Right. Unfortunately, the optics are, here comes the president landing on, on the S-3A Viking, aircraft, and everything. And he gets off, and everybody's really happy because it's always a cool thing when the president comes out and visits, your unit, your ship, your, whatever. So it's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
And unfortunately, and this is where the political handlers or his media people sort of really dropped the ball. The banner, no big deal, but with him standing where his podium was and speaking to the sailors on the carrier, the banners behind him were off to the one side type of thing, and it was not the best optics, especially as the thing kept dragging and dragging. It was it's one of those things. It's one of those preventable stupid things that you can,
It was.
you just have to move the podium so it's not in the camera shot. So yeah, the media can sit there and talk about the mission accomplished banner, but the president's not in the same shot.
Yeah.
Sort of like the Navy patches on the when Trump went to Korea or wherever it was, and they all had the flight suit patches, which was much to do about nothing because
That's silly. It's just, let's start an argument over nothing,
well, yeah, but it's because the media doesn't understand anything about the military culture and they
Right.
and everything that the administration does is bad. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. It doesn't matter which administration it is. It's always bad.
well, but this one particularly, I mean, I think the last one got a lot of
They definitely look. Trust me. If and I still actively serve, and I have to watch what I say. But yeah, if there were things done today that were done then, we'd probably have a different reporting process. Let's put it that way. Um, but so going off of that, and then this is what I've always, and I don't know, and this is why I want to ask you how you feel about it, because I was 22 at the time when I was in Iraq in 2003. Like, I was young, I was very idealistic, as you say. Like, I didn't think about things then the same way I think about them today. And I was I had a lot of emotion creep into things because, I literally joined, I dropped out of college to join after 9/11. That's the only reason I wanted to. And then I felt like when I got there, I was like, damn, I wanted to fucking go to Afghanistan, and I'm not. And eventually I did get to go, but here I am in Iraq. But I do remember, like, I paid attention at anything that came out, any email, anything that I could have an opportunity to digest and look at, because we were still, Stars and Stripes was running like 2-3 weeks behind at the time. I mean, like, we didn't have current news at all. I didn't, like, there was nothing that was same day. And I pestered my LT, and I remember his Lieutenant Weed, great dude, and he was an E3 during Somalia. Like, he was an engineer, he was in that whole thing, and I always hit him up for information because I always tried to get stuff from him. And then my commander at the time, Captain King, great dude, still in. I think he's a full bird at this point, great guy. But I always would bother those guys as a young, like, I was an E3, became an E4 while I was over there. I just wanted to know, like, what the fuck is going on? And then I remember reading about Paul Bremer.
Oh, God.
I want to ask you, like, because I was 22 years old, and I tried to immediately, when I read the story, it was Paul Bremer has disbanded the Iraqi army. And they are no longer, not only are they disbanded, but they are prohibited from participating in the new army going forward. And my immediate 22-year-old emotional brain was like, if some country came to the United States, did whatever, and said, you know what, the U.S. military, you guys are done, and you don't get to participate in the new military. Like, what do you think all of us would do with all of our experience, our wealth of experience? Not only that, but our responsibility to our families. What do you think we're going to do? And I remember being in that environment. I'm like, these fuckers are about to join Al Qaeda. And sure enough, it wasn't hard to predict.
Or they just went off on their own. Yeah, I mean,
but that's what I kind of, because that's me, the emotional 22-year-old.
It's okay. You weren't. Trust me. There, even the older 40-year-olds were right there with you, and our chief of station when this happened, because he advised strongly against it.
Imagine that.
Bremer had it in his mind that de-Baathification, because the Baath Party of Iraq was a lot like denazification in Nazi Germany, and so he wanted to prohibit Baath Party members from participating in the process. Well, that reads well in a poli-sci paper in class, but the reality is that a lot of people join because it's a way to get ahead, but the people that are able to make things happen, the local politicians, they're going to be Baath Party people. I mean, you do some sort of maybe cleansing, re-education, whatever, to disavow loyalty to the previous regime type of thing. When he disbanded the Iraqi military, the Army, Air Force, and their 3-person Navy. Um, sorry, yeah, I got a bust on him. I mean, that was the thing. Is it's not just they're disbanded because they'd all gone home.
Yeah.
They were all home. But the thing that people forget, why were they so upset? Not because, probably a little bit because their pride and pride of their country and patriotism and things. But they were getting paid. They were getting paid by us, the U.S. and not the agency, but the U.S. government. And suddenly you got no more paycheck.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
let's see. I know how to get to the local weapons storage unit, with all the RPGs and mortars and everything. And yeah, it's, I can either join a group or I can just be pissed and start going rambunctious on my own.
Or what do you like? I think about that scenario, Ron. Like if it was me and it was reversed, and I was a 22-year-old who just is all of a sudden told, "You've got nothing." What am I gonna do?
You're gonna shout, "Wolverines!"
Yeah, but I mean that was my point. I remember living through that, and I just remember reading that in the.
Oh, we were so like stupid.
How does this make sense to anyone above? I'm 22. I'm a fucking E4. No one's listening to me anyway. But I just remember thinking, like, how does this guy do this? And there's no pushback. And I'm not saying there was. I'm just saying. Like,
well, but let's see, General Sanchez, who's an absolute tool.
Ricardo Sanchez. You know what? Quick anecdote. I can't speak. Quick anecdote. Ricardo Sanchez, his daughter was dating a PFC in our unit who was attached to us at the time, and he came over and visited him at the Baghdad airport. It was hilarious. It was so. But anyway.
Whatever. Yeah. But he was a tool, another over promoted lieutenant colonel. But I mean, and the people that Bremer brought over, I mean, because I got to meet them all at the VVIP because they flew in on agency aircraft and things like that, because they can't fly U.S. Air Force stuff. So, but I mean all the literally the Biffs and Buffys and all the self-important political donors and their sons and daughters showed up, and they were going to implement Jeffersonian democracy in Baghdad and the rest of the country. And a friend of mine was at the in the green zone there at where they were building their headquarters and so, and the big fight was not over programs and policies and moving the country forward. It was like, I want to get a window overlooking over the pool so I can check out those young female Republicans. And so it was just, so senior agency people come over because everybody wants to do the victory parade and things like that. And we'd been downtown talking around, and my Arabic was not the best, but a little, but so the Iraqis are talking to us because we're Americans, and we're talking to them and we're listening to them, and they're asking us like, what's going on? What's happening? I mean, we used to have electricity pretty much 24/7, and now we get it maybe 4 to 6 hours a day, and water's turned, this, basic life thing.
Absolutely remember that.
Yeah, and so they're saying, and they say, so we're hearing from these guys, the old Fedayeen, the old, Iraqi Fedayeen, which morphed into Al-Qaeda terrorists, just general bad guys. Stop. My dog's bothering me. And,
no worries.
So anyways, and so I tell like the number 3 guy in the agency, I says, hey, this is what I'm hearing when I'm going downtown to the different souks. When you're having your meetings with Bremer and Sanchez and, whoever else, you need to, we need to get out there and do some positive things, get these civil affairs guys going, let's get the AID guys out there going.
Right. Exactly.
And
the whole point.
And I literally got, they're all looking at me like the RCA dog, like the, huh? And I'm all like, Jesus. And so the chief of station I mentioned, well, he he was pretty upset by the whole developments that Bremer and his gang was doing, and he sent a pretty honest, never to be declassified, but blistering cable back to D.C. And yeah, well, he shortly got fired after that too, because it was, there's a lot of things about Iraq that about the buildup and things like that um, I can't talk about.
Yep.
But I will say this, that if and history is always, the people who forget about history and don't remember it, especially the little things, are they should be taken out and horsewhipped at least a little bit. But so I always say historical illiteracy is a crime. But if you remember, after Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Clinton becomes president. George, Herbert Walker Bush, the first Bush, he takes a retired president takes a victory lap tour to Kuwait to visit the country that he organized the coalition to liberate the country. And Saddam tries to assassinate him. Unsuccessfully, thank goodness, and all that. But so fast forward a few years later, okay, now we got Al Qaeda, 9/11. We're in Afghanistan. I can now beat up the mofo that tried to hurt my daddy.
Yes.
And for all the other reasons, I mean.
But everybody says that, and it's like it's almost like a joke. But when someone like yourself says that, it almost sounds like we can't discount that anymore. We have to realize that this was what this area was.
Well, they always they say, oh no, that's you're too pedestrian. You don't understand, and they try to paint it in such broad, very $20 word terms.
No, they do the presentation of the justification for it.
Yeah, like I said, there's some things I was read into that about things, and I just I read them and I literally did the huh. I mean, who wrote this crap?
Yeah.
I mean, during the whole with that whole initial tour with and I think it was also the second tour, David Kay, who had been assigned by the president to hunt for the WMDs.
Yeah.
And David Kay is a really nice guy. I mean, I don't know his politics, and I really don't care. I mean, he was a great guy, and I did him some solids, and he did me some solids, and things like that. But it was, he took his mission seriously, but I think deep down he knew he wasn't going to find anything. It was frustrating.
It was all moved across the border to fucking Iran.
Well, I think a lot of it, that's one story. The other story is that, like Saddam comes into the room and everybody's in fear for him, and he goes, hey, you, Eric, Mr. Nuclear Weapons Bomb Developing Dude, how's it coming? Why, God, boss, we're this close. We're this close. And he comes, hey, Ron, you're the bioweapons dude, how we doing? Oh, dude, man, I got germs coming out my ass. I mean, we're ready to execute. Hey, you, George Bull, or what is it, Gerald Bull, that big cannon dude, I mean, these guys were all, so it was all literally like Potemkin village of threat. But, when we would have our infrequent, poorly reporting human sources tell us what was going on, they were reporting what they heard and what they knew, which was, so we were acting on bad information. So it was, God, no, leave me alone.
Now that you've, I mean,
now that I've ruined everything.
No, you didn't ruin anything. It's just, it's, I feel like it's just, unfortunately, it's a time where I wish more people would look back with an actual intellectual curiosity and realize we for lack of a better term, we fucked up with that moment with Paul Bremer and wherever, right?
We did. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I literally had discussions with senior Army officers, general officers, multiple stars. They were literally over, I I think we were through at least one bottle of scotch, single malt. Sorry. Um, hey, I never turned down a general when he's
Bourbon, not scotch, Ron.
hey, it was his liquor.
Yeah, whatever.
And he would say, and he literally looked at me in the eye. He says, "What do you think about the whole question about Bremer and the disbanding the Iraqi military?" And I told him it was a mistake, and he goes, "So did I." And looking around, going, "You're a freaking 3-star general at the time. You were a 2-star, But you know, civil authority. We worked for the military and worked for this.
Didn't even, the chief of staff, was General Shinseki chief of staff at the time, or was he just?
I think so, because that was the whole Black Beret time too, or was it Schoonmaker? I can't remember.
Have some fucking pride in your appearance, and you can make a beret appear the way it's supposed to be. But I just remember everything with General Shinseki. He essentially told everybody, like, "Hey,
Right.
it's not going to be that easy," and everyone's just like, whatever. I don't know how true,
Well,
but I mean, I don't think.
yeah, I remember my early time in Afghanistan. Like it was right before, right after Anaconda, and I have some senior DOD guy come up, and he's all, and again he flew in agency air because, the Air Force was all, couldn't find their, playing with two hands type of thing, and yeah, it was pathetic. But he comes up and we're getting ready to put him on an airplane from Kabul back up to Tashkent, and he's asking me, hey, you've been here for a while, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I go, this dude is not anywhere in my food chain.
Yeah.
And and I look down and I says, hey, I'm going to tell you one thing before I answer your question. You've asked me a direct question. You are going to get a very direct, battleship broadside, honest answer. If you don't like it, don't ever ask me the question, type of thing. And he goes, oh, okay. And he says, and he'd asked me all about,